Welcome to Neal on Fire, where we talk with the people developing new ideas and technologies to address the growing wildfire challenge. Today, I'm joined by Scott Holman, the founder and CEO of Redline Safety. Scott is not only a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, but also a retired fire captain and paramedic with more than 33 years of fire and EMS experience. Redline Safety is developing I'm Safe, an integrated platform combining wearable technology, environmental sensors, deployable communications, and real-time situational awareness to help protect firefighters in the field. Scott, welcome to Neal on Fire.
Thank you, Neal. It's great to be here.
So I have to ask you, after more than 3 decades in the fire service, what did you experience that convinced you that Redline Safety needed to be started?
Well, like many of us in those years, I had friends and colleagues not only die in the line of duty, but I had a lot of them getting sick and being forced into retirement due to work-related exposure. And when we all signed up for this job, we kind of just took that as being part of it. That's just part of being a firefighter. You're placed into hostile environments and high-risk exposures, and everything changes over time. And if you've been it for a while, chances are you something might happen. And I just kind of endured that for the first, I think, 25 years. And then I took an investigation class and studied some line of duty death investigations. And I found, me personally, that with the right information, some of these tragedies could have been avoided. But I don't have a background in technology or business development. So I started asking around. My son was a big influence on that in the early days. And we decided, let's see if we can get that right information. And we started talking to engineers and others about how we can do this. And we came up with a wearable technology idea, and it's kind of grown ever since.
Wow, that's great. So tell me, what are the biggest gaps as you see them in firefighter safety and accountability that exist in most departments today?
Well, I would answer that by saying right now, I think the burden on incident commanders is enormous. As a captain, I had operated as an incident commander a few times on initial attack, and then gladly accepted a transfer of the incident to one of the chiefs who would run it. Tremendous amount of need for radio traffic, getting canned reports from resources. And what I found was that incident managers, they know where the fire is, and they know where the engines are, and they know what the plan is. But the question that had remained was, what else do we not know? And I always thought that everything was fine. But what we decided we wanted to do is, where are your firefighters? How are they doing? What are they exposed to? What are they breathing? What are the ongoing changing events? And we thought, well, maybe there's a way we can gather this information so that it's at the fingertips of incident managers, so they don't have to use radios to try and find out where people are, what an update is, that we would notice and we would see changes as they occur before they become even a problem. We can send alerts on if a firefighter is overly stressed physically and how they're doing before they even know themselves. The other thing is, changing of conditions. One of the things on our gateway system is we're gathering wind data. And we would sense a wind change before it becomes an issue on the fire. Firefighting is a very reactive profession that when something's happening, you mitigate it. With the data, with the right kind of information, we may be able to predict some of these things before they become an issue. And it might ease the burden of incident management to be able to have this information at their fingertips without having to get on the radio and ask for it.
So in simple terms, because not everybody listening to this podcast is going to be a firefighter or familiar with this technology. Take us through what is I'm Safe, what are the components, and how does it address those gaps that you were talking about?
In the beginning, when I took this class and I called my son, who was a college student at the time and the only one in the world that I knew and that I was familiar with that knew anything about technology, I called him and told him about this investigation report that I just went through. And he said, well, what was the issue? I go, well, a lot of it was just knowing where the firefighters are. Once they dismount from that fire engine, there's no information other than what comes across the radio. And I thought, well, this main event occurred in 2013. I thought they had technology available. So he said, well, I couldn't find anything after a search. He said, but why don't we just build something? And I thought, well, like what? He goes, well, something with a GPS module. And we start talking about that. And I go, okay, sounds great. And he goes, but then we can put sensors on it. And I go, like what? He goes, well, like air temperature. And having spent a lot of years out in the wildland, air temperature, pressure, and humidity is always one of those things that can be very valuable. And so he said, well, let's put that on there. And then so it started this dialogue. And, then we took that. And so right now, our wearable, the one that we have two of them. One's for all hazard and one's more specifically designed for wildland. After having worked with Homeland Security on another project, they wanted us to focus on that. So we pivoted a little bit. So that wearable that we have has GPS, it has air temperature, pressure, and humidity, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi for connectivity. And then also we've added carbon monoxide and total volatile organic compounds, but we also have open spots on the board so that we can add other sensors as people may want. For example, one of them is radioactivity. We can sense radioactivity with wildland fires out because we were on a fire up in Redding years back, and they said, don't go over there. There's radioactivity over there. And it's like, how do we know it's not where we're standing? So it was, and they didn't know, they didn't have an answer. So I think there's areas where radioactivity might be important, and building the hardware like we have to be able to accommodate different sensors is very helpful. So then the other thing we did is we started working with manufacturers of other technologies to gather biometric data, and such as Garmin, Polar, and now also we just signed an agreement with Oura Ring. And what we like about that is if we have different products for firefighters, we can accommodate their personal needs, because if you put 10 firefighters in a room, they're going to want 7 different things. So our mission is to think of what the firefighters need and what they want and accommodate that.
So there's so much information being gathered, which is really amazing. Information that firefighters and incident commanders never really had access to before. So my question is, already a firefighter is dealing with a lot of situational awareness information. And I'm wondering how much of this is within their purview versus an incident commander who might be monitoring it and then maybe in their ear giving them a warning about something that's happening.
Well, one of the really important features that we've built is simplicity in operation and scalability in operation as well. If you're the kind of person that doesn't want to have any cognitive load, all you have to do is turn it on, put it on, and go to work. All the data is gathered, it's sent to the cloud to be seen on the dashboard and saved for future use. Typically, the incident managers would be using the dashboard, but also we have interoperability so that we can actually move this data onto another dashboard, because we didn't build this technology to replace other people's technologies. We built it to connect them. And there's some people out there that have a system that they like, which is great. So we can actually connect this data to their system and make it as user-friendly as possible. Now, with regard to cognitive load, every incident manager is different, and there's filters. So you can filter out or filter in any kind of data that you want, and it gathers the data automatically. There's nothing for the firefighter to do except just do their job. We have certain features that we've built into it to do automatic awareness opportunities for incident managers. We empower the firefighters to make a lot of these choices on what data they want to share. And because some people might find some of it kind of personal. If that's the case, that's fine. This platform was built for you, the firefighter, to have this data. Sharing your location, okay, that's easy to do. Some of the other data might be a little bit more personal, and if it matters, you can keep it to yourself. But with regard to the dashboard itself, incident managers, if they are monitoring personnel and the conditions, a lot of these warnings kind of come up automatically. In fact, we just did a thing with the Department of War and Pentagon where we actually won first place in a competition 2 weeks ago in Orlando, Florida, because they did a nationwide search for the safety technology for wildland firefighters. And during my presentation, one of the things that stood out was, of course, the off-grid self-healing mesh network and edge computing that we've created, but also the use of these gateways that have thermal imaging that we kind of talked about how we can stage those either magnetically on top of vehicles, including dozers and tenders and everything, or they can be placed on tripods with solar panels that gather wind data, air quality, air temp, pressure, humidity, all that other stuff. But the other thing we've added was thermal imaging. And in this presentation, when we told them that these gateways actually don't replace laces, it enhances laces, which for those that are listening, lookouts, communication, escape routes, and safety zones, very important that those are maintained. And that how this helps with the lookouts and communications. So the idea behind all this data is, if it's easy to become overwhelmed with it, then incident managers can filter out a lot of the others, but it's a lot of the other information. but it's automated through the use of AI. We're using, since we have an open API and the interoperability, we're able to use multiple different AI platforms. And we found that it requires less of an incident manager to go out and seek information by getting on the radio and asking for updates and getting CAN reports and all the things that they have to do. It just simply provides the data right there at their fingertips. So the testing that we've done, it makes it easier and less burdensome in many circumstances for incident managers based on the platform and how it's set up.
So for an incident manager, they have a dashboard. Do they set thresholds that when certain variables hit a certain point, either individually or in combination, or perhaps using the AI, that they will get an alert that a firefighter is in danger or could be in danger?
Well, that's one of the other things that we do with the firefighters themselves is that it's designed that every firefighter will have their own account. And they'll be given the option whether or not they want to share the data. And if they choose to share the data, then they can also be able to decide how they want to share it. If they want to share the raw data, they can send the raw data and have alerts correspond to that raw data, or they can choose their own threshold limits that if, for example, if my heart rate gets above this level, I want my icon to just change from green to yellow. Okay. Or at this level, I want it to turn red and flash, because we all know firefighters and we all work way past where we really should. I mean, we're our own worst enemy, because I've never seen a firefighter stop. They could be beyond their maximum output, but they just keep going. And there needs to be some sort of a moment where, maybe you're not pulled off the line. Maybe you don't pull yourself off the line. However, you will have this information. If you choose to share the information, incident managers will have it. And it's okay to get checked out. It's okay to stop by medical and just, maybe get some treatment. One of the things that this has opened up with the medical community, a global group of medical directors called Eagles had heard about this. And we started a conversation about how this data could transform how we do rehab for firefighters, so much that we can take it to the point of detoxification protocols. So that firefighters they can participate in if they want. So when it comes to the data collection and what you can do with it, there's a lot of options. And again, like I said, we put it in the hands of firefighters and labor and management to kind of work out what do we want to do with this data? How do we want to display it and collect it? And so there's a lot of options. And, maybe different departments will feel differently about the data. Maybe different organizations will have different priorities, but it's scalable, and it's the ability that you can take it and form it in any way you want to meet your department's culture or needs. Is very simple. It's automatic.
For the firefighter, what is the interface? Is it a cell phone app that they're looking at that's going to provide them with the indicators and the alerts and so forth?
So our system it's a cloud-based system, meaning anybody that has an internet connection can access it. It doesn't have to be just Android or iOS. It doesn't require any kind of special apps or anything like that. But the idea is that if the firefighters want to take their phone with them, they can. I've never taken my phone in on a grass fire. I've had it in my pocket sometimes because it's a different environment. But the idea is that the data gets sent to the cloud automatically without them having to interface with anything. And if they want to interact with it, then they would need a device, a tablet, a phone, some means by which they can access it themselves if they want. And that would be up to them. Typically, I would guess that they're probably going to be too busy working to actually access it in real time. However, there are ruggedized phones and ruggedized pads that they could take with them into a structure fire or a grass fire and actually have it with them, so they can, as long as they have a connection to the cloud, which most of the time that works out okay. That's why we created this LoRa mesh network, is to be able to provide connectivity where there isn't any.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, because so many times in a remote area, you're not going to have reliable cell service. And so much of this requires some form, either satellite or cell, to get up to the cloud. So it sounds like you, using LoRaWAN, have created a way to capture that information even when communication doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's part of what's been really great. great about working with a good team of knowledgeable and experienced engineers because, like I said, I had no technology background. So when Homeland Security started looking to us for a solution to pyroterrorism, they said, when you're in these remote areas, how do you connect to the cloud? And so overnight, our engineer came up with this self-healing mesh network where, for those that may not be aware, mesh networking is unit-to-unit connectivity through LoRaWAN, which is a 915 megahertz frequency. And so in the absence of direct connection to cellular, they all start searching. They cache the data, they hold on to it, and they start searching for somebody else that has connectivity. And with LoRaWAN, with a 5 kilometer range, as long as somebody has connectivity within 5 kilometers, which is obviously very far away, then you should be okay. However, that's for areas that are so disconnected, that's when we develop these gateways. And so if you can position these gateways where there is cellular connectivity within 5 kilometers of the closest firefighter, you can make that connection. So recently, we just heard that Nordic Semiconductors has made a new chip that allows us to connect our gateways directly to Starlink. We haven't gone down that path yet, but there's a lot of connectivity opportunities with Starlink. I've seen departments that are starting to get Starlink units. We built a communication trailer that's lightweight and can be helicoptered in to locations that have Starlink on it. But I think with this new chip that is out there, and maybe there's others, that we can solve this connectivity with these gateways. And as long as there's a gateway nearby, which they're rather small and easy to deploy, then that mesh networking and connectivity to the cloud is solved.
Let's talk a little bit about the practical end of this. I understand that you've had some proof of concept happen. Talk to us a little bit about what happened. What did you learn from that experience? How did the I Am Safe platform evolve as a result of what you learned in real field testing?
Yes. So during proof of concept testing, in the early days, we were working with San Jose State University because I had nowhere else to turn to other than a college that could help me navigate the world of technology. So we had a vegetation management burn here in the Sacramento area, and we brought some students up with what we were working on. And I went out and found the most inexperienced, newest firefighter I could, because vegetation management burns are, there's not a lot going on. And so we put it on him, and he went out, and they did this, 35-acre burn, and 3 hours later dropped it off and drove away. And so after he drove away, the student looked at it and he goes, wow, this guy had a heart rate of 208 beats per minute 35 minutes ago. And I went, no, he didn't. I've been a medic for over almost 30 years at that time. And I go, nobody has a heart rate like that. I'll tell you what, I'll call him. I'll just talk to him. I said, check your equipment, right? I mean, I was in denial. So I called him later at the station and I said, okay, this is what we found. Was something going on? 35. I mean, it was time stamped and location stamped. I mean, all this data was all stamped. I go, 35 minutes ago for about 18 minutes, this is what we saw. Is there any truth to that? And he goes, oh yeah. And I go, what? He goes, well, we had a wind shift. And I was in the thick of things, sucking down smoke. I had snot running down. I mean, we can all relate to this, right? Sucking down smoke. I've got heat and fire all around me. I'm panicking. I threw the hose down and ran into the black. And as a probationary firefighter, I thought, that's probably not a good look. But he was having a tough time. But he said, then he looked back and he saw fire underneath the engine. So he went back, searched for the hose line between the heat and the smoke and the flames. And so for 18 minutes, his heart rate was above 200 beats per minute. I go, okay, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any paperwork. Shouldn't say this out loud, but I guess I am. We didn't have any paperwork signed by him. I go, but I will respect your privacy as long as I'm allowed to tell your story. He goes, oh yeah, you can tell him who it was. I go, no, you don't want me to do that. But I said, thank you, because I'd like to share your story because this is fascinating. So 6 months later, I had a cardiologist who's well known in the Sacramento area in the Mercy system in my office. I wanted to tell him, hey, I want to tell you about the work we're doing and get your opinion. And I told him the story and he goes, that's my patient. I go, it is? And he said, yes. He goes, he didn't tell me how he found this out, but we've tested him and found out that he had an unknown heart problem because he wasn't symptomatic. It's called supraventricular tachycardia. All you medics out there know what that is. It's just SVT, but he had runs of SVT that didn't come up on a treadmill test. And there's a reason for that. This is back when we were just testing things out, created lots of questions. And what the medical community has said is that they've always felt this way, but they don't have widespread data on it, that you can't recreate what a firefighter goes through and how they respond on a treadmill. There's so many things at play when this kid was describing what he was going through. There's fear, anxiety, excitement. There's exposure. There's hypoxia, probably based on what he described. A lot of things happening, and it caused this unknown, undiagnosed heart problem to rear its head. And he said, we didn't know anything about it. He had to have what's called an ablation, go in there and burn some of this heart tissue away to be able to control the out of control heart rate that was leading to this. And he's 24 years old. His doctor he said, since he was asymptomatic, and he said 5 or 10 years of this, and he could have met with catastrophic results. This is a save. You guys saved his life. I went, can I quote you on that? And he said, yes. So my point behind all that is, what else do we not know? Because we're not gathering the data. Now, if we had that data, the medical director for the International Association of Fire Chiefs, who's been talking about doing detox, hey, maybe we would have, first of all, sent him over and get him diagnosed and checked out. But others that have this exposure, maybe we come up with some means by which to, purge some of this carbon monoxide by 20 minutes of high flow O2 before you go back into service. My point behind a lot of that is we can do better. Firefighters have a life expectancy 10 years less than the average person. And I just Googled it again. And if you Google what's the life expectancy of firefighters, it'll pop up. There was a PBS notice a study that they did a few years ago. This is the sort of thing we all need to keep in mind, because first of all, firefighters are my favorite people. They put themselves in harm's way in hostile environments to protect and treat total strangers. They do this. And in order to do that, first of all, they have to go get educated. They have to take a class and they have to learn things before you can even apply. So these are people who are committed to public safety. I'm committed to the firefighters, and I want them to maybe have a longer life. That 10 years to me was a wake-up moment with the work that we were doing, that maybe we can have an effect on that. And I think they deserve that. I think firefighters deserve to have more information. And guess what? Along the way, we're gathering information for incident management. And along the way, we're able to make smarter, more data-driven decisions that are probably going to be keeping communities safer than like never before. So that was our moment. That was a validation moment for us.
Yeah, that story about the 24-year-old firefighter is incredible. And that's just in a very small environment, test environment. So it almost seems like there's two lanes here. One of them is to put this in place to, help fire departments keep their staff safe, right? Keep all the firefighters out of harm's way with all of this extra data that you're able to collect, and for incident managers to be able to pull them or make changes if there's a dangerous situation that arises. However, you're collecting all of this information that as a whole is incredibly valuable in terms of assessing the day-to-day dangers that firefighters go through in a way that nobody has captured. I mean, it's not, people know it. Oh yeah, there's toxins that firefighters are exposed to. There's, all kinds of hazards. But what you're doing is you're putting it in data form so that analysis can be done and make the firefighting environment as safe as possible. So I applaud you for doing that. That's incredible work to be able to provide a level of data and information about this very dangerous job that's not really existed before.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's, in this journey of discovery, that we're still discovering new ideas and new thoughts as we talk to more people, but we're finding out that there's a life cycle to wildland fires, that there's pre-incident information that could be very important, that pre-positioning our gateways, for example, and again, I'm just guessing because I wasn't there, the Palisades fire, they've got these predicted weather events. These gateways that you could, like I said, you could set them on a tripod with a solar panel. They'll run indefinitely. That you could pre-position in high-risk areas when you're guessing about conditions, and you put it out there, and you've got thermal imaging, you've got all this weather data, air quality, and you got all this important information before the fire that can actually, once you start gathering this information, you can create a database that will kind of learn these geographical areas other than just what's happening now, what the trends are. And of course, this is coming from data scientists that can explain it much better than I just did. Then there's active incident data that you can gather, and then post-incident data. There's information post-incident that is still really relevant to understanding this life cycle of wildland fires. And I think we're just now discovering what data do we want, how do we want to collect it, and what can we do with it once we have it? Because it's quite an important issue in this world, and not just here, but everywhere. We're going to Australia next week. They've got their own issues, and Canada in October. So there's a lot of data we're looking to collect.
So where is the company in terms of bringing this to market? Are you still in kind of the proof of concept stage? Are you in production? If a fire department wants to order this today, is it available, or are you looking for candidates for proof of concept?
Well, we're always looking for interested departments that want to do a pilot test with us. In the world of hardware development, I've discovered and I found that as challenging as it is, you can't get the data that you want any other way other than having the right hardware. And so every time we test it, we get great feedback from the fire departments and firefighters that have it. And so we've done 3 such pilot tests in California and in Washington. And we just got our final. I mean, we're at the end where we're going, okay, so we have these final changes we're going to make. And so we're in that process right now. And so, but when we get this done, we'd certainly like to find another department. That the important part about pilot testing, as I'm told, is that you want to pilot test in a different department after you've iterated the hardware. There's a reason for it. And I guess I can understand it. I'm happy to test it with anybody, quite honestly, but we're at the end of where we're developing our final version. So we just need to make a couple changes to the circuit board and then corresponding changes to the enclosure. The technology readiness level is a rating that it's kind of a universal, I guess, idea of where you stand. And we're at a TRL 6, about to, right knocking on the door TRL 7. A TRL 9 is when you're all done and manufacturing thousands of units. So we're close, and we're always looking for others that are out there that are interested in what we're doing. Researchers, engineers, fire departments. Now that we're in the Department of War space and kind of working with them, they've got some interests. So it's an ongoing process, which is really exciting. I'm really enjoying it and can't wait to get it finished. So anybody that's listening, if you have any questions or interest in wanting to learn more, please reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
So Scott, in closing, if a fire chief remembers only one thing from our conversation, what would you want that to be?
That change is good. This is a new approach. We've all heard that firefighters hate 2 things: change and the way things are. And it's said kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, but there is a little bit of resistance to new things. This is a new thing. This is a new thing on a very large scale. And so what I would like to leave the chiefs with is your people matter. And we have a means by which we can help keep them healthy and healthier and understand how they're doing in real time and, post incident. So, think of them and they'll appreciate it and reach out, I guess.
Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing both the technology and the personal mission behind Redline Safety. It was an amazing story. And for those who'd like to learn more about Scott, I'm Safe, and the Redline Safety solution, please visit redlinesafety.com. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to Neal on Fire and share the episode with others in the wildfire and fire service communities. And until next time, I'm Neal Spungen, and this is Neal on Fire.
Thank you.